was not. But that leads into actually my next point, which is to really, really thank Danny Cho and Paul Eisenstein. This has been no offense to myself and Hillary, but I think this is, and Scott Critch is not here, and you, this has been the best LAC ever, I think. And not only that, but they had to deal with the most people by far, and they've just done it with incredible aplomb. And if you've noticed them leaving your session, it wasn't because they were rude, it's because they were called into an emergency. If anyone else left your session, I don't know what to say about that. So that's number one. Number two, I want to especially thank Jennifer Friedlander. I can't tell you how many panels I was at where I was like, wow, it seems like this was actually planned to be a panel. And it was solely the work of Jennifer Friedlander. Every other LAC, we've had multiple people there. Not only an incredible thinker, but also an incredible organizer of things. So if you have any conference planning you want to do, Jennifer is now going to hire out to do, no, she just said no. Okay, so I also want to say afterward, please do not rush Slavoj. We have a wheelchair coming in to help him out, so we're going to have to. No, oh, it's a little joke. But I do want to say that most of you know, and I have to say that I totally support him in this, that he's for, since the United States has abandoned Ukraine, Slavoj is for rearming Europe and supporting Ukraine, and he's actually doing his personal part in that. You saw the book that I gave to Danny. Slavoj's offered all remainder hardcovers of Less Than Nothing to the Ukrainian army to drop on Russia because they're so heavy. So it was a nice gesture on his part. I do want to say that some of you might know this. I recently had the pleasure of reading Slavoj's new book on quantum mechanics, and he's trying to introduce mathematics more into his thoughts. So today he'll be going off on a lot of tangents. So that's really, that was the only one that was for me. That's just, okay, all right. So I also want to say to Slavoj, do not push that table out because it will fall, and then we'll have a disaster. So this is the last thing, because we're not allowed to speak long at LAC. That I once was talking to Joan Kopchak at a dinner, which was at a place that was Slavoj and my level, not her level. And she said to me, you know, everything that we do is possible because of him. And I just thought, that's just really true. And I also want to say that even the ethos of LAC is really in his spirit. I was just talking to him in the lobby of the hotel, and somebody came up to him and said, are you the really great philosopher Slavoj Zizek? He said, no, you have me mistaken for someone else. So I think in that spirit, I want to introduce Slavoj Zizek, who needs no introduction.
To say, so please don't, let's say after 50 minutes, throw something at me or remind me to conclude. First, I must say a sincere apology. It's, you know, believe me, next week I will be 76, and that it is nothing dignified in getting old. You just get more senile and more lazy. I hate it. So, my apology goes to all those. It was physically for me impossible to spend more time here. I was every day sleeping around, even this afternoon, around 15 hours per day. So my sincere apology, it wasn't my ignorance or whatever. I'm really glad to be here. It's not just all my friends who are here, Henry, Jennifer, Hillary, Paul, and all of them, Russ, we can go on. I will not enumerate them. I will just say that Todd is not included. Why? You know, I was told by some multiculturalist idiots that when you come to a foreign country, you must obey their manners. So I looked what are the manners here. I looked at meeting Zelensky, Trump, and Vance, and that's what you will get. No gratitude for me because you treated me disrespectfully. You didn't say thanks enough. When I came here, this was disrespectful. You didn't wait for me at the airport. I was just told that he has some minor conference leg, I don't know, and has to be there. You know, he sent me a message before the conference saying he will make everything to feel me good. And Trump, your great leader's reaction to Zelensky came to me like, who are you to tell me how I should feel? So, thought you are out. When you want peace, come. Otherwise, you are out. Now, let's go for, it's a long speech. I hope I will be able to do it. I apologize again in advance if some of you will recognize some of the stuff, because I really want to focus on this topic, lack, excess, and so on. While I'm still learning about quantum mechanics, among other people from Jennifer and Henry, of course, I find that its insights enable us to read human history in a holographic way, as the result of a series of contingent collapses of superposed possibilities. What do I mean by this? Quantum waves describe the world at some kind of, I like this expression, pre-existent level. What exists, or rather, what insists, I would say, in our, or as our reality, is only the outcome of the collapse of quantum superpositions. At this pre-existing quantum waves level, particles follow all possible paths when they move from one to another point. Consider the well-known double-slit experiment in which individual electrons follow not one but every possible path from the gun to the screen. One path takes the electron through the left slit, another through the right slit, back out through the left into a U-turn, and so on. To understand how something emerges in our reality in a particular form, we have to understand that it enacted all possible forms, and that these superposed forms continue to echo in the final form. So it's not simply we have superposition of different possibilities, and then once you have a collapse, one form erases others. No, the superposed other forms exist. I'm not sorry not to have time, but I will briefly improvise. For example, one of my favorite jokes, I quoted it at least in my work, I would say 20 times, you know, from Ernst Lubitsch's Ninochka, where a guy comes to a cafeteria and says, please bring me coffee with cream. The waiter says, sorry, we don't have cream, so I cannot give you coffee without cream. We only have milk, so I can only give you coffee without milk. This may appear as a joke, but this is, I claim, A, quantum reality, and B, also how our history works. When something happens, to understand it, you can include into its identity all things that might have happened but didn't happen. Now you will say, what has this to do with history? I think precisely a similar thing holds for our political struggles. You remember two big examples. I don't think they were such a big success, but okay, some kind of success that we had where peaceful negotiation won over armed resistance. But okay, the two examples are, of course, South Africa, how ANC came to power, and here, Martin Luther King. But I read history books about both these examples. And in both cases, you know, and Martin Luther King was fully aware of this. Yes, he won peacefully through all those shady negotiations with LBJ, Johnson, and so on, but he was fully aware that this worked only because behind there was a threat of Black Panthers and so on, of more violence. Without that threat, it wouldn't have happened, peaceful negotiation. It's the same, Mandela was fully aware of it. He was able to play peaceful negotiations because there was always a threat that ANC might resort to more violence. Why is this so important today? I think that for a whole series of reasons. First, I think that we cannot any longer afford this progressive view of history where, even if it's not absolute determinism, things follow a certain predestined path. I'm here even critical of Marx. Marx was aware that communism will not necessarily arrive, but for him, the possibility of communism was inscribed into the situation. It may fail, but that was the logical outcome. That's why, although I don't agree with that, I think we should reject this evolutionism. That's why although I don't agree with them fully, I quite enjoyed The Dawn of Everything by David Graeber and David Wenger, you know, the bestseller, where they point out, apropos ancient Inca society, how it wasn't simply all this human sacrifice, authoritarian society. It was the superposition of this authoritarian version and of another much more democratic version. What does this mean for people like me who in some sense are still close to Marxism? I think that there is another level of Marx where he is aware of this. Marx always emphasized that capitalism is not a necessary culmination of alienated history. Capitalism emerged, Marx made this clear, in a totally contingent way because of a series of, again, contingent reasons. The discovery of gold in Latin America, the privatization of commons in the UK, and so on. So, now comes my point. The situation was radically open, but once capitalism was here, it, as it were, retroactively, it literally, at a symbolic level, of course, changed the past. The history became readable retroactively as leading to capitalism. So, you know, there is a famous quote in Marx's manuscript, Grundrisse, where he wrote, "Human anatomy contains a key to the anatomy of the ape. The intimations of higher development among the subordinate animal species, however, can be understood only after the higher development is already known." Now, this does not mean teleology. To understand apes, you already have to know that it will end in humanity and so on. No, I think it's the exact opposite. Marx's point is that everything was open, but once humanity is here, history becomes readable as a progress towards humanity. And in human history, once capitalism is here, then all the prehistoric forms point towards capitalism. I don't have time, of course, here to go into what really interests me, the logic of reactivity. How, through a collapse, things retroactively become what they are. I wrote enough about this in my books, quoting usually my good friend, maybe the best theorist of catastrophes, Jean-Pierre Dupuy, who you must know this if you know my work, who had a wonderful quote from Le Monde about some elections in France 20 years ago, where in Le Monde the journalist wrote, if Monsieur Balladur, politician at that time, will win next Saturday, if he will win, then his victory will be necessary. You know what's the idea? The idea is precisely that the situation is in itself open. But it's not simply contingency openness. Retroactively, it becomes necessary, but all other variations remain as a potentiality. And this is, I think, what Walter Benjamin is in his thesis on history made it clear with his famous thesis that history should be read retroactively, in the sense that today's revolution, if it will happen, I doubt that it will in the form he predicted, but that today's revolution will not just redeem the present, it will redeem all the past failed attempts, which were just there waiting in shadow. So that for all the history, from Spartacus and so on to whatever, will be redeemed. Here, another quote that I usually like to use, I will not go into it. I misattributed it to 1953, but it really happened in 68, unfortunately. But I like the false version. It's better. You know that Zhou Enlai was in Geneva making final negotiations about the end of the Korean War. And somebody asked him, what do you think about French Revolution? And he answered, it's too early to say. He was fully right. Because do you remember when exactly more or less 100 years after the French Revolution, that is to say 1989, and then socialism, so-called socialism, fell apart. The whole, for liberal and conservative view, the entire task became readable in a different way. It was that this revolutionary period became just a false way, it has to be forgotten and so on. But if there will be a revolutionary way, our reading of the past will change. You know who knew this? I always like conservatives who are not stupid. I often quote him, T.S. Eliot, when in his famous text about artistic, he says that every new phenomenon, really new in art, changes the entire past, makes it readable in a new way. Now you will say, of course, this means that just with every new period we get a different interpretation. No, no, of course, we are not at a magic level. But it's nonetheless more than just a different reading. And you know in what sense it is more? In the precise sense that the past is in itself open. That's why I'm against historicists, idiots who claim that, for example, to understand Shakespeare, you have to read fat books about Elizabethan England and so on. No, my idea is exactly the opposite one. We now can understand Shakespeare much better than not only his era, but he himself was able to understand himself. For example, Hamlet. My discovery was, you know, Akira Kurosawa did Hamlet in 1962 with a wonderful title, that only bad men sleep well, which is true. So what I want to say is that something that was open at that stage, there not even as a possibility, a kind of a blind spot is actualized afterwards. If you allow me also another, I will try to go as fast as possible, improvisation here. I often quote this example and must tell you proudly that I have now, you know, I'm a ass-kissing guy who likes to flirt with great people, and I mean, scientists, quantum physics fascinates me. And for example, I had some exchange with some of the big names, Carlo Rovelli and so on. And they all liked my metaphor, which is that to understand quantum physics, the best way are video games. Because you know how they are done. You are in a video game, virtual reality. But it is not programmed to the end. Like you see trees in the background. But since it's not part of the game, that you will go there and approach the trees, the programmer didn't lose unnecessary time to program the details of the trees and so on. And I took this from a popular introduction to philosophy. The idea is that something similar happens in quantum physics, although it's a wonderful attack on the notion of God. The idea is, I was even taught that among quantum physicists, this is a standard joke, that with quantum physics, we humans, how to say it in a vulgar way, God with his pants down. God thought that we humans will not be intelligent enough to penetrate deeper than the structure of the atom. So we said, why should I lose time programming them? We did it. And we came to indeterminacy and so on. Now you will say, but is this not idealism? Like there must be a programmer. No, the whole point is to conceive in a materialist way reality as not fully ontologically constituted. That's another story. You find all this in my books. Now we come to new, more interesting stuff. So my attitude towards Marx here is ambiguous. I think, and here I will link my thesis to Todd's work, I think that Marx, to jump quickly, but you are Lacanians, at least some of you here, Marx's vision of communism remains all too much a vision of capitalism without capital, without capitalism. Marx always speaks as if we have this incredible dynamic in capitalism, but then at a certain stage of development, you drop the form of capital, search for profit and so on, and you will get a self-propelled, even more crazy, wild expansion, reproduction. I think precisely, and here I'm entering your topic of lack and excess, I think that precisely as we are experiencing today, this will not happen. The greatest Hegelian insight that we get is that something that may appear to be an obstacle to full development of a field is its condition of possibility. So you take away the obstacle and you lose at the same time what this was an obstacle to. Now I will take an example. I apologize myself sincerely, but I just don't have a better example. If it will sound slightly male chauvinist, no, it's an old story that I repeat again all the time. I was flirting years ago with a lady, I will not tell you where, who said the last lover who saw me naked, told me that my body is perfect, just it would almost perfect, it would have been just better if I were to lose 2 pounds, a little. And I told her immediately, just don't do that. Because you need this imperfection to give birth to the fantasy, my God, without that you would be perfect. But if you take away the obstacle, she would just be bland, average, you lose it. So I will not lose time here. Something among these, I think, happens this with Marx, when he all the time says that the form of capital is the obstacle. Yes, but only in the form of this obstacle can the expanded self-reproduction function. Another point of critical, but with all the sympathy, my disagreement with Marx concerns, and again I refer to your stupid book for alienation, on alienation, no? You know, Marx's notion of alienation is still that, I don't like the word humanism, pseudo-Hegelian one. Alienation means humanity collectively produces reified forms which appear as an alien force, and then in communism this alienated substance will be reappropriated by humans. The lesson of Hegel is a totally different one. What happens for Hegel, but also if one reads you in detail for you, it's not simply that, oh, we have to accept that we are dissenter, that we always, alienation is constitutive. For Lacan, this is not the last word. The last word is what Lacan calls separation. But separation is not this alienation. It's not, I look at a reified world, then I discover, oh, but it's us humanity who really created this world. No, no. Hegel is here very precise. The move out of alienation is not this total reappropriation. It is that the distance that separates me from the alienated substance is already separation in the substance itself. So we are not faced, we don't have a decentered substance in the sense of we are just puppets, there is some big alienated mechanism which controls us. No, the lack, the instability, antagonism is in the big other itself already. And to calm you down, those of you, many of my friends are telling me, listen, you're getting crazy with your Christian atheism. No, this is what I mean in my Christian atheism. That, and people miss this, I think. Really good theologists like Kierkegaard or my favorite British Catholic Gilbert Chesterton knew it, that the basic move of Christianity, and Hegel put this clearly, is that, of course, authentic religious experiences, I'm here outside God. God is up there as an absolute substance. What Christianity does is not, oh, if you pray, if you are good, blah, 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 you may approach God. No, it's simply to realize that when you feel separated from God, God is out, the distance that separates you from God is immanent to God itself. And this is, for Hegel already, the message of this, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, Father, why have you abandoned me? The one who says this is Christ, who is himself divine. But I will not lose time with this. Just, I hope you will agree, you can attack me later, no? How it's not, the alienation, again, is not our ultimate fate, in the sense of we are just small puppets, we have to realize that, that another absolute power which is decentered, impenetrable to us, pulls the strings. No, this big other is in itself incomplete, not in control, and I don't have time to go into details here. This incompleteness of the big other itself opens up the space of freedom. That's why I nonetheless think, without any naivety, that freedom is not simply just an illusion. Now we go on. All these paradoxes bring us to the topic, which is the topic of this conference, lack, but I would have added lack and excess as a couple. What is the Lacanian paradox here? According to the common view, you would say, yes, lack and excess. At one level, lack, at a different level, excess. So the solution is simply, if something is lacking and there is another thing in excess, let's take that excess to fill in the lack and we live in a perfect world. Precisely this is not possible. Why? For Lacan, because lack and excess are strictly coexisting. They are the same thing at two different levels. It's not that here something lacks, there is too much. It's the same thing at two different levels. This is why, I don't know where you stand here, but for me, I'm sometimes a little bit tired of this pseudo-Lacanian, I call them poets of lack, you know. It's always the lack, blah, blah, blah. No, I think maybe, I'm not sure, but our primordial experience of lack is that of an excess, which already Freud knew. How does human desire arise? Lacan himself, but then some of his half followers like Pontalis developed this nicely. The situation of a young child is that soon he discovers that others want something from him, but it's impenetrable to him what they want. So the original question for Lacan of hysteria is not, I don't know what I want, you know, this boring motive, whatever object I have, it's never that, this endless metonymy of desire. No, the original question is, what am I for the other? The original lacking subject is not, oh, I cannot ever get a perfect subject. It will all know. It's the object which is always missing is me, the subject as object. I never can fully identify what I am for the others. Okay, this is also in all my books, so let's slowly come close to politics. I think that this paradox of lack and excess as being two sides of the same are absolutely crucial to understand the madness of our present situation. You thought, well, at some point, this was already years ago, man, I like this. Nice, crazy idea. Didn't you say that capitalism comes closest to human nature or something like this? I think we should say that maybe Trumpian madness comes even closer, you know. In what sense? Let me be precise. New poverty and excess of money are the two sides of the same coin, since money, cash especially, no longer really matters. As none other than Steve Bannon, who is, as I ironically like to call him, in contrast to Elon Musk, he is, the Trumpian left, to put it like this. He put it very nicely that in one of his podcasts that today, money is for jerks. We are afloat in virtual money. Many people quite literally don't know what to do with money, but the affluence is like a house of cards. We can which can collapse at any moment, as it almost did in 2008 financial meltdown. So Hegel, I think, was the first to describe this paradox when he pointed out that in a modern, which means capitalist society, there is not enough money precisely because there is too much of it. And this imbalance is structural. So that we cannot say rich are too rich, poor are too poor. So okay, let's redistribute it and everybody will get just enough. In the paragraph 245 of his philosophy of right, Hegel produces the exact formula of this paradoxical relationship between lack and surplus, apropos his notion of rebel. A very brief quote. It becomes apparent that despite an excess of wealth, civil society is not rich enough. Its own resources are insufficient to check excessive poverty and the creation of a penurious rebel. End of quote. It is thus the very surplus that recreates the lack it is supposed to fill in. So that we should even radicalize Hegel's formulation. It is not only that, despite the excess of wealth, civil society is not rich enough. No, it is the very excess of wealth that makes it not rich enough. Namely, rich enough to get rich enough to fill in the lack. This is, I think, the precise, wonderful formulation. In capitalism especially, again, excess and lack are the two sides of the same paradox. The paradox of wealth resides in the fact that the more you have, the more you feel the lack. It is, again, the superego paradox. The more you follow the injunction, the more guilty you are. Or this is also discernible in the paradox of anti-Semitism. The more Jews are destroyed, the more powerful is the remainder. This paradox, I think, is crucial to understand what is happening today. I'm now directly approaching the big question, is Trump a fascist or not? I have problems here. My problem is that all too often, did you notice, the left displays some kind of intellectual laziness. They see that something new is emerging, but then they are too lazy to analyze this novelty in a close way, and they say, okay, it's something bad, so look, our usual term for really bad thing is fascism, so it must be fascism. I don't have yet a good term for what is going on. You can say, maybe Varoufakis has this techno-feudalism. I have he did hit upon something, but I have some problems with that, which is why strategically I am tempted to use the term liberal fascism. I think to really understand Trump is to point out that he is not simply a fascist. It's a fascism grounded in extreme liberalism. Fascism usually is a strong state and all that, but Trump's professed goal is what Musk is doing, reduce the state, cut everything on. The paradox, of course, is that to do this, you have to strengthen the state even more. Or at the level of freedoms, they want full freedom. And it's clear where you end, the full freedom with more and more prohibitions. So, how does this work? Now I will develop something which some of you may know. I think that it's not just a psychological feature of Trumpian universe, something that I cannot but call shamelessness. Shame is disappearing. Now you will say, ooh, are you a conservative or what? No, 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 I'm much more precise here. We obviously have today examples of shamelessness. By shamelessness, I mean something very simple. Let's not yet go into theory. That things which were unimaginable 20, 30 years ago are now openly done. Although my position with regard to Israel and Hamas and war there, I'm often attacked by both sides as usual, I nonetheless find problematic at least some things that are happening very problematic in Israel, you know, which is for me maybe the lowest moment. Do you remember in July 2024, some guards in a military prison just south of Jerusalem, guards who were very honest, escaped and rendered public what went on there. That Palestinians suspected of being Hamas members were tortured in a, well, to put it very mildly, incredibly brutal ways. They even, some of these honest defectors, they even brought out some video, you can find them on the web, video clips. For example, the standard procedure was they held you down on your stomach and penetrated your asshole with a big metal stick full of razors, needles, and so on, so that dozens of Palestinian prisoners died of bleeding. But okay, I'm here skeptical in the sense of who knows what others are doing. I don't have any illusions here. What really depressed me is that when this became public, and this is shamelessness, nobody denies this in Israel, in that public life. It's accepted. But you know what happened? IDF military police was honest enough to arrest some of these guards who were doing the torturing. And we got there, it's wild demonstrations, like they are our heroes, they're fighting terrorism, we cannot address them. So, I didn't want to take too much time, you can find it on YouTube immediately. There was a following debate in Knesset. A supporter of torturing the prisoners said, this is insanity. Someone in the prosecutor office thinks it's possible to arrest soldiers for things they do to Nukba, Hamas elite units, to Nukba terrorists. We can't continue as usual. He was defending what they were doing in that prison. Somebody then interjected him to insert a stick into a person's rectum. Is this legitimate? He was immediately interrupted. Shut up. Yes, if he is Nukba, everything is legitimate to do. Everything. Then I could have shown you a debate on Israeli TV. A guy said, soldiers are suspected of raping a shackled prisoner. Doesn't this concern you? The reply, I don't give a rat's ass for what they do to that Hamas man. The only problem I see is that it's not state policy to abuse detainees. They deserve it, and it's a great form of revenge. Maybe it will act as a deterrent. So this, I must say, makes me sad. It's no longer that they deny it and so on. They openly, proudly state it. Now, there are many examples of this. I don't know how much it was reported here. On November the 7th, there were clashes in Amsterdam between Maccabi, Tel Aviv, soccer, European football club, and pro-Palestinian protesters. And Israel exploded. It's a new crystal night. But then it became absolutely clear that the Jewish fans did incredible things. You can easily find on the web hundreds of them shouting incredibly open, obscene slogans like, "There are no schools open in Gaza because we killed all the children there," and so on. And again, shamelessness, you know, like nobody even reacted really to it. So again, where does shame enter here? In his seminar, The Other Side, The Reverse of Psychoanalysis, it's Lacan's reaction to the May 68 events. Lacan, makes a much more important point than his decried provocative statement, "You protesting students you aspire to what you aspire to as revolutionaries is a master. You will get one." This sounds to be the usual liberal conservative gesture. You protest because you really want a new master, and you will get it. But if you read Lacan in detail, and there is English translation of this seminar, his position is much more refined. In his critique of protesting students, he surprisingly says, "All you are lacking is a bit of shame." Again, then, Lacan repeatedly varies this motive, like saying that students fear that they might be carried away by buffoonery. Let us start rather from the fact that buffoonery is already here. Perhaps by mixing in a little shame, who knows, we may be able to hold it back. And even he concludes the seminar with, "What I put forward for the majority of you is just that. I managed to make you ashamed, not too much, but precisely enough." Jacqueline Miller, here I agree with him. He provided a nice commentary to this point. He says that we no longer have today a capitalism that relies on a repression of enjoyment. The new mode of capitalism is rather that of permissiveness, where what can sometimes be the cause of difficulty is the prohibition on prohibiting. Now comes the central point. Lacan doesn't advocate here a minimum of morality or repression that should be maintained to prevent social disintegration. You know, his point is not, yes, on the one hand, psychoanalysis should bring out the unconscious. On the other hand, if we bring it out too much, it will explode in self-destructive enjoyment, so let's stay somewhere in the middle. No. Lacan's point is much more refined. It echoes, and a friend of mine found a proof in Lacan's some early text from late 1930s that he maybe even took this from Frankfurt School, because if you look at complete notes to this text, I forgot which one, which was reprinted in Écrit, Lacan referred to Horkheimer and Adorno and so on, namely to the notion of repressive de-sublimation. In the sense of when you de-sublimate it, in the sense of let's brutally admit the way things are, you then get rid of repression. Repression gets even worse. I don't have time here to go, I just warn you into Freud's wonderful statement, which already points in this direction. You know why? I must say this self-critically, as a guy who was already here in '68. The idea was there secretly anti-feminist one. I remember as young revolutionaries, blah, blah. The idea was hysteria is bad, and secretly, although we didn't say hysteria is feminine, no? They just protest, but they really want a new master. while perverts go to the end. What a hysterical subject only dreams about, perverts effectively do it. Freud already said that nowhere is the unconscious more inaccessible, more repressed than in perversion. That's the key statement. Perversion is not, I have all these dirty dreams, what I do to you, or you to me, or group, or clique. No. Even if you bring it all out, repression is even worse. Why? The catch is that desire is in itself immanently inconsistent, traversed by what Freud called primordial repression, which is why the permissiveness of perversion ends up in a self-destructive deadlock which gives birth to call for a new master. And as the ongoing now wave of new populism aptly demonstrated, the new master's shamelessness by far exceeds the shamelessness of the old leftist protesters. So one has to be very precise here, and again, I'm referring to the idiot there in the first row. Shame, would you agree this, referring to formula? Shame is not a defense against too much desire. Like I would like to do, I will not name them, don't play with my fantasy, it gets really dirty. I have a secret desire to do horrible things to you, but out of shame I don't do it. No, shame is not a defense against too much desire. It is a defense of desire, of the lack that constitutes it against the excess of its oversaturation which obliterates it. As at this level, as you point in your last book, Pure Excess, desire and need can also be correlated as excess and lack. The capitalist excess of useless products necessarily leads to a lack of things we actually need for survival. And this imbalance is structural. You cannot simply resolve it by way of saying, no, we produce too many excessive things, we will produce just things that we really need. So you see my point again. Shame should be reinterpreted, not as this type of, yes, I don't want too harsh a morality, but nonetheless I cannot bring all the dirt out. No, when you bring all the dirt out, repression is stronger than ever. And this is why, again, shame should be at the political level, at the sexual level, maintained. Let's go on with, where am I?
So you should stop.
Sorry?
Stop pretty soon?
I will do my usual joke. I'm stopping myself now, and then the debate is open. I see my hand. I will ask myself, Professor Zizek, could you tell us what did you want to say in the remaining part? And I will try really briefly to go through. You know, to approach from this standpoint Trumpian populism, what we should do is bring out its immanent inconsistency. It doesn't make Trumpian populism weak. It makes it strong, but it's a potential threat. People only talk about Trumpian populism as this neo-fascist, organic community, get rid of immigrants, of LGBT, of trans, and people will be united again. But this is one side of Trumpian revolution. This is, again, with all irony, I say this, the Trumpian left, Steve Bannon and so on. But look at Elon Musk and all those guys. They are doing exactly, practically exactly they're doing exactly the opposite. Their dream You can find it where? Do you know who is, I find him very interesting, Curtis Yarvin, this radical, whatever you call him, I didn't know how to call his presentation. His basic notion is network state, which is more communist in a vulgar way than communists ever dared to be. His idea is that democracy no longer works, we have to erase tradition, and in an almost Platonic way, we should reinvent from the 0 point a new society. This should be done by new authoritarian leaders and artificial intelligence and so on and so on. So that, and of course his point is then against what he calls the cathedral universities, which are trying to block this. But let me go really quickly. First, he already predicted what Trump is doing now 10 years ago, or when he said, when asked how would you do this new state, he says first you gain power lawfully through an election, then you exercise it unlawfully. You simply declare a state of emergency in your inaugural address. You know this? Yes, but you know, this echoes Trump, who said, he who saves his country does not violate any laws. In other words, you can do it. Then, the next crucial author is, I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, Balaji Srinivasan. He brings this to reality. He simply proposes that instead of trying to change society, let's gradually open territories which will be totally rebooted, reconstructed by the 0 point. And this is, I think, in a bad sense, Platonism at its purest. Tradition is no longer needed. We first digitally imagine a state and then apply the idea to an actual territory. So, again, do you feel the gap here between this standard Trumpian, Steve Bannon Trumpian populism, real Americans deeply defending their way of life, and this worse than the wildest communism idea of beginning from a 0 point? Now you will say, I'm dreaming. Hey. Can you find clear traces of this in, this was a hint, an awakening, what Trump planned to do in Gaza? Empty it, reboot it, create a new society, from the 0 point. And in this sense, as we told before, I told you that for me, we already have such a new man. I'm more and more fascinated, no, intellectually, he's blah, 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 pseudo-deep. But Elon Musk, he often reminds me of how Marx, at his words in German ideology, describes communism. You will not have a single profession. In the morning you will be a farmer, in the afternoon this, that. Isn't this Elon Musk? Like, you know, he does politics, he wants to travel to Mars, he does these Teslas and so on, all that. And at the same time, I didn't know what's the number now. I think he had children with 13 or 14 different women and so on. So he tries to enact what we may call, in the 68, jouir sans entrave, enjoying without obstacles. Another reason I'm opposed to the legacy of 68. I think, to put it brutally, Elon Musk is the ultimate consequence of, is the last figure, the, let's call it capitalist reappropriation of 68 protesters. So I'm cutting short many provocative things, like immediately I go to the end. Well, I really wanted to provoke you, but if you are Substack inscribed, you can find this in my last text, which appeared there, I think, 3-4 hours ago. Namely, my idea is that often, that's where we are wrong. When we, as these ruthless liberals, quickly dismiss opponents as fascist, well, fascism is not a clear term. Quite often, we liberals, what we don't understand, we quickly designate it as fascism. Now, I'm not saying there is a good fascism, but we should never forget another of my enemies. But here I agree with him. Lesson of Ernesto Laclau, which is don't confuse fascism as an ideological edifice and practice with elements of fascism. Fascism simply reappropriated elements which he often took even from the left. For example, what's your and mine, I'm not patronizing you, elementary image of fascism? Crowds, disciplined crowds marching. Ha ha! You know where Hitler and Mussolini took this? From working class protests. This is leftist, the right before fascism was not doing it. And many other examples, like in the longer version. I wanted to provoke you to read one paragraph description of Nazi dealing with banks. They said, a big Nazi banker, a text from 36, in capitalist society, banks just reproduce themselves without taking care of the needs of the ordinary people. We shouldn't allow this. In our Nazi state, banks should be controlled, regulated, so that money circulates for the needs of the real people, and so on and so on. So, now, really, I'm sorry to disappoint you to conclude, yes? So this is for me the mega tension of Trumpian populism. On the one hand, you get the craziest Neoplatonic speculations, erase traditions, build a new society. At the same time, you remember Trump's inaugural speech, the two words were crucial: common sense and sanity. I think that the paradox is that Trump is doing both at the same time. His practice is the worst attack on common sense that you can imagine. But nonetheless, what do I mean by his practice? It's a neo-feudal practice. A couple of guys, Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and so on, effectively behave as neo-feudal masters. And I think we, the left, should focus on this inner contradiction. Now, just one concluding remark. As a matter of fact, two of them. The first one is, don't be afraid to steal from the enemy what it appears. No, what the enemy already has stolen from us. I will not go into it now. I know people will accuse me of, oh, now I'm flirting with fascism. I don't care. But what I want to say is that now I am addressing you, Anna. Yeah? In a good way. Your immediacy book. But would you, it's an important theoretical point, would you agree or not that for immediacy, for debunking immediacy, sometimes it's needed in everyday practice to propose an apparently immediate figure, but a figure which literally makes visible the immediate. My example is this one. I'm sorry you can't see it clearly. For me, the event was, you remember, Biden's inauguration. All the bullshit. It was maybe one of the most disgusting events that I can imagine. And then one man stole the show. Bernie Sanders sitting there with his woolen and so on. But what I want to say is that this was some sort of immediacy, but not, would you agree not a bad immediacy. He was the symptomal point. You see him and he's very present there, presence there. Meant, and what was so nice is how millions got it. His very presence there meant millions got it. The Biden inauguration was one big fake. Just not to really conclude, really. It's in my nature, don't criticize me. It's in my nature to conclude with a vulgar, cruel joke, which I think best describes the situation. Not just you, Europe can be even worse. I somewhere quote already this, I apologize myself, but the vulgarity is intended because that's our situation. A vulgar joke. After a guy's wife underwent a long and risky surgery, the husband approaches the doctor, who is his friend, and inquires about the outcome. The doctor begins, "Your wife survived. She will probably live longer than you. But there are some minor complications. She will no longer be able to control her anal muscles, so shit will drift out continuously out of her anus. There will also be a continuous flow of best-smelling jelly from her vagina, so sex is out, plus her mouth will malfunction and food will be falling out of it." Noting the growing expression of worry and panic on the husband's face, the doctor taps him on the shoulder gently and says, "Don't worry, I was just joking. Everything is okay." She died immediately. I can imagine the same reality today. Let's replace the doctor with Trump, who promises to cure our democracy, and this is how he says, "Our democracy is well and alive. There are just some complications. We have to throw out millions of immigrants. We have to limit abortion to make it de facto impossible. We have to use National Guard to crush protests." And then he, Trump, notices the worried face of those who said, "Don't worry, I was just joking. Democracy is dead under my reign." And so on. We really live in shitty times to come. I'm sorry if I was too long, but I was just condensing what I'm writing in all my stuff, and if you are interested in it, there are quite a lot of texts which you can find for free. I mean, I'm not a bad guy. I feel so bad about this Substack, At the same time, at this point, 3 of my publishers are threatening to prosecute me because they discovered that I'm giving my manuscript for free. So, thanks very much, and it was really nice to be here. Thanks. It fits perfectly where we are today. Oceania is United States and England. Eurasia is Russia swallowing Europe, and then China and the Hungary is East Asia, and this is what I must say, opposed to BRICS. If it were to be the good BRICS, nothing against. But what BRICS is amounting to is, yes, it's no longer a monopolar, it is a multipolar world, but in reality it means 3, maybe 4, maybe even 5 powers. Each has its own domain of influence. That's why the problem with Trump, I don't care if they will make a deal with Putin or not. The truth is that they're already speaking the same language, which is the language. Russia, he admits, it's Ukraine, whatever. Trump is Greenland, Canada, whatever. And China is whatever you want, Taiwan and so on, although they have some right there.
Okay, let's do some questions.
Sorry?
We have to do some questions, or else we're going to...
But don't you think that I'm a characterized figure, sacrificing myself? I'm already in advance answering your question. I stop, please.
Okay, all right, let me just say, if your question goes over 20 seconds, you're cut off and it's not going to get answered, okay? And secondly, Slavoj did not win the prize because his talk went way too long. Okay, here we go.
But you should be the tough master, make it systematic.
I will.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zizek, for a wonderful talk. There's a poem.
When you begin like this, I see a knife. You're starting with a knife. Do it.
Well, like any good friend. There's a poem quoted by Heidegger at the end of A Question Concerning Technology by Otterbein.
Yeah.
But where danger is, grows the saving power also. I want to know what you think of it. I was told it was...
I know it may appear the same thing, but I think that this is, for me, I even called it ironically in some of my books, Hegelian paradigm. It's two-way. Many friends told me, oh, but it looks, the situation is bad, but then they called Hegelian. I think, no, the situation is bad and it may just get even worse, you know. So, not to lose time, I will answer you in a precise way. In our situation, where we have so many promises, artificial intelligence, populism of better, I would almost say that we should turn around Hegelian, where the solution appears, grows, no, the danger is around the corner.
Wonderful.
He needs this lazy guy to run around a little bit.
I wanted to ask about retroactivity. So you said the past is open, and then you said literally, and then you said at the symbolic level.
And then again?
At the symbolic level. So you said literally and then symbolic.
Yeah, but no, sorry. I'm sorry, but finish the question. I'm sorry.
It's just that, is the past open at the symbolic, or you're dealing a lot with quantum mechanics, are you trying to think that it's open in nature, and maybe these are not different?
My position here, I don't have time to go read my whichever book, I repeat myself all the time, I'm struggling with it. It's a little bit more complex. I think, this is my own thesis from, I think already the Indivisible Remainder, my Schelling book, that the wonder of quantum mechanics for me is that something for which we thought it's exclusive to the symbolic universe, this retroactive and so on, at some level it seems that it can happen already in nature. So my point is much more refined. This may be close to, we didn't have too much time, what Henry Cripps, and you know who is for me Henry? We are old European elitists. Forget about Henry. His uncle or what, Joseph Cripps, great classical conductor. That's why I know him otherwise. No, sorry, to go back. So I would say that, as Henry told me wonderful formula, that quantum mechanics, and he claims, I'm too old and tired to read Lacan, he claims that this doesn't mean idealism, that, oh my God, if symbolic logic is already in nature, then spirit is everywhere. No. It means, as Lacan says somewhere, that in quantum physics was the first time that the real, in the Lacanian sense, is brought out in science. So it's more complex. I'm struggling with it. The original miracle, again, is that something, and already my Indivisible Remainder book, in the last chapter, I go through all this retroactivity and other stuff, something that we automatically assume this is nature, not culture, exists already in what at least appears as nature. In other words, that's my big paradox, just the consequence, I'm totally opposed to this deep ecological bullshit. Mother Earth, we humans are hubris, we ruined it. No, sorry to repeat an old joke. If Earth is our mother, it's a bloody bitch of a mother. Just look at oil and coal, our big, still main sources of energy. Can you even imagine what mega catastrophes must have happened in the pre-human past of the earth to get all these gigantic reserves of oil and so on. Can you even imagine, like I read somewhere, when they are getting oil in Antarctica, or they discovered their tropic animals and tropic remainder of trees and so on. In other words, one speculation is that the Earth at a certain point changed its axis and so on. So I think that the beginning of a truly materialist ecology is nature doesn't exist. No, I'm not crazy. It is out there, independently of us. But in our spontaneous approach, we understand nature as, in contrast to us humans who are always full of surprises, creatively thinking, nature is this homeostatic circulation, the sun will rise tomorrow, always the same. No, nature has the same basic dynamic as human society. At the beginning is madness, imbalance, which then temporarily can get balance. So again, my point is, as Henry said, to introduce, and that's what quantum mechanics does. The Lacanian point of the distinction between reality and real. Ordinary physics speaks about reality, natural laws, and so on. Quantum physics, with this quantum waves and so on, brings out the Lacanian real in nature itself. Sorry, I would like to go on, but life is shit. Let's.
Thanks. Hi, Slavoj. Just going back to the remarks about the brutal torture techniques by the Israeli military. And I'm reminded of Abu Ghraib, the Abu Ghraib scandal as well.
Sorry?
And, the Abu Ghraib scandal.
The Americans
Abu Ghraib.
Torturing
The Iraqi.
Yeah. Abu Ghraib, sorry, yes.
And I know that Hillary's done some work on this as well from the perspective of torture.
Yeah, but sorry to interrupt you, then you go on. You know what's my problem? I'm absolutely not anti-Semitic, I know, but what makes me infinitely sad is that, at least with Abu Ghraib, and I think my point is, hypocrisy is better than obscene openness. At least till now, they tried to cover it up, interpret it away. They claimed, oh, it was just marginal, it didn't really happen, blah, blah. What horrified me in that example is that they openly admitted, without any regret and so on. That's this absolute shamelessness.
Yeah, well, that was partly my question. I was going to
Yeah,
mention
sorry.
I was going to mention Susan Sontag's, one of the last essays that she wrote was about the Abu Ghraib.
Sorry, who?
Susan Sontag.
Uh-huh.
Sontag. And in that short essay, she basically said, she was saying that the Red Cross and other aid agencies were talking about this, it was well documented, but it was only after the images came out that, there was a response. But today it sort of seems like you're saying image or no image, that, and I thought this is what you were getting at with the, whether the shame or shamelessness is disappearing. But the question that I wanted to ask is there any hope for the image, I suppose? Can it still be
Here
mental?
things get really problematic because first it's the obvious, you all know it, that with now still somehow maybe we can see a fake image from authentic, but quite soon, I think, it will become indistinguishable, like images will be suspicious to such an extent, and what worries me is not just the usual fear, like you produce a fake image, or not just an image, clip, me doing unimaginable things, and so on. I fear almost more things happening in the opposite direction, that I really do horrible things. You catch me, and then I say, oh, well, it's a fake image, and so on, and so on, This brings me, if you allow me very brief improvisation, I said I didn't have time for my next book, to the question of artificial intelligence. I am not a traditional humanist in the sense of, but there are things that it cannot do, creativity, whatever. Who knows? Who knows? At this level, would you agree with me here? I think about 2, 3 things that at least now it cannot do, artificial intelligence. First is to spontaneously develop rituals. Not, of course you can program them, but you know, I read recently, I forgot who is the author, a book on these everyday rituals. Many of my friends have, you know, when you have squares on the floor, many people have this, you shouldn't step 2 times of the set, you get a hole, and many things like this. I will not lose time here. But the whole point is that what I like in these rituals is that we should resist a pseudo-Freudian temptation. What does it mean? No, I think they don't have a deeper meaning. They are, on the contrary, attempts to, in a meaningless situation, to give the appearance of meaning. You follow some rules and so on, and it appears meaningful, but there is no meaning. Second thing, I follow Lacan here. Swearing, curses, you know. Lacan puts it in a wonderful way, I forgot where, that he claims even that cursing is the original symbolic act. Cursing means what for Lacan? It's not that I try to do something, it goes wrong, I curse. No, it's that cursing means, although we live in language, we are never at home with language. And when you realize this, that not only things go bad, but you cannot even articulate it clearly, want and wrong, that this frustration is cursing. Now, of course, you can program artificial intelligence, but can it authentically curse with subjective? And I have many other points. So again, I think it's wrong to be obsessed with this anthropocentric question, will artificial intelligence ever be able to think in the authentic sense? First, this means nothing. 99% of the people probably, so cannot think in an authentic sense. And I don't mean here ordinary people. I think that especially so-called intellectuals, many of them, you know. What I want to say is that I just want to be open. Who knows? One thing I am sure, maybe if artificial intelligence will organize itself into some kind of new, I hate the word, but handle spirituality, it will not be on the human scale like ours or better. It may be something radically different. We may even miss it, ignore it at all. We should be very open here, I think, but it's better.
Okay, last question.
Here. Oh, sorry. You know what, from mine, and you measure from mine, did you notice his politics? He strictly is sticking to the right side. That tells everything.
I just want to point something out that this is Slavoj's typical error, because he looks at things from the perspective of the
This is
master.
how you do it, Idiot.
From the perspective of the people,
Yeah.
I was on the left.
No, from your people's view. No, in Parliament, you left and right, it's from the view of at their podium. So, you are even worse. You are a right-winger pretends to be a leftist. When we take power off you, will be left. Okay?
Hi, Slavoj. Hey, I was surprised to see you discuss Curtis Yarvin, who founded the neo-reactionary movement alongside our friend Nick Land. His whole thing, Yarvin's whole thing is he wants a patchwork of soft corps, which is he wants corporations to literally own entire states. The workers will, and I just want to know what you think about this idea of the soft corp, the sovereign corporation.
I think that first, it's not as new as he thinks. In the history of, now I will be politically correct old leftist. You know, I was always fascinated by these early imperialists or whatever you call them, like British East Company, the Dutch East Asian Company. They were corporate structures which had fully their own sovereign territory. The Dutch company, whatever it is, they own today's Indonesia and large part of Malaysia and so on, and without any responsibility to the Dutch laws, they created their own order there. And now I will tell you something that even traumatizes me. We were lucky, although I doubt if this is lucky, to learn how they were punishing prisoners. Something which is my nightmare. They tied you to a tree or whatever, and then fixed head like this, and then the water was slowly dripping into your throat, so that to breathe you had to swallow it, and then like the joke was people observed it when you got to the edge of explosion. It went on for hours, and they were just waiting when literally your stomach will explode and so on. It was extreme brutality. So again, it already happened, you know. But what interested me, I'm not a specialist in this, is how ridiculously this idea of new corporate state is opposed to what I ironically called Steve Bannon left Trump, because their entire rhetoric is against big corporate power. And here I see a problem. I'm not saying I sympathize with Steve Bannon, but don't forget something. In the first Trump mandate, whatever, you know that he was fired from the White House for a very interesting reason. At least he was an honest populist. He proposed, now you have, I think, in the United States, 25% maximum tax, the tax for the rich. He demanded to raise it to 40%. He lost his job in the White House and so on. And even, you remember how 2 months ago or when, he brutally reacted to Elon Musk. But now he made a compromise and so on. So would you agree that the difficulty, that was my basic message even, the difficulty with Trumpism is precisely to think this contradiction, because I think it will never happen that then there will be a big battle. Will it be at least a right-wing populist regime, or will it be a corporate regime? He needs both.
Can I just say, I'm going to do like Zelensky and after the fact, thank you so much. It was incredible. No, I'm just kidding. It was just incredibly generous of Slavoj to come and give a great talk, and I just thank you so much.
I must, in a friendly way, disagree with you. It's so against my nature to play this elitist guy, you know, stays in the hotel, fuck off you, and then comes at the end to take appropriate so much time. It's not in my nature.
We all know that.
I'm sincerely ashamed.
We all know. Yeah. Thank you so much.